Hello everyone, it's ASMR Duck. Quack, quack, and quack. And just like to say welcome back. I know it's been a little bit and we'll just leave that to life. So, for today, I think we'll call this a Canada Day special. And this leatherworking project we're doing today is we're going to be creating a new sheath for this axe. There's nothing wrong with the original one, but I don't know. I feel like we can spruce it up a little bit. So I'll be making one out of leather, and it will have a Canada Day theme to it. It is super rainy outside. It is raining cats and ducks. And so, frankly, I don't feel like going out and trying to find a party or anything like that. I just want to have some good food, listen to some music, and work on a project. So, let's get started. Quack. So, first things first. Going to pick out the tools that we need for the job. Knife, beveler, pointy spike, Stanley knife, burnisher, rusty pliers, then the stitching punches. Going to use a 6, 4, 2, and a 1. Just stick that off to the side. And so we are going to be sharpening the tools first. So this is called Jeweler's Rouge, and I'm heating it up to make it nice and melty. And once it's hot enough, I'm then going to rub it onto this leather. And what this is going to do is it's going to create a abrasive surface which I can run my blades on. This is a swivel knife. This is what I use to make my precise little cuts for when I'm tooling and etching into the leather when I'm making designs. Nice and sharp. Then, I've always called this a skiving knife, or a Japanese leather knife. It's definitely one of my favourite tools. Oh yeah, it's ready to go. So, first, like all good plans, starts off with a design. So I'm just tracing the head of the axe. I'm going to do it twice because for each side of the sheath it's going to look a little bit different. Like on the side that's going to be touching me, it's going to be having belt loops, and also it's going to have the flap that goes over the top of the popper. this you can be a little bit rough because there's going to be excess that will just be kind of chopped off as we go along and hone it down into the design that will become the final product. Using my Stanley knife to cut out the design as, well, I wouldn't call it as carefully as possible, but maybe I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Cut. Now we have both sides. So here we're using, I would say it's about 6 ounce veg tanned leather. So while it's not the thickest leather, it does have some quite a bit of strength to it. And when I was at the leather shop, I treated myself to quite a nice piece, so it's very even and I wouldn't quite say supple, but almost soft, while still being strong. And now I'm using my pointy stick to trace around and make the ever so slightest line on the leather, which I would then use to trace and cut. And judging by how long it's taking me to cut this, I should probably replace this blade. Because the rule of thumb is that a dull blade is much more dangerous than a sharp blade. Because if you have to start applying harder forces to it, and it becomes more liable to have an uncontrolled slip. So, just be safe out there. And yeah, so while this axe doesn't have, I wouldn't say it's like special in any regard, it's just a benchmark, but it comes with me on all my camping trips, and this summer I have quite a few booked, so I think for being a trusty companion of mine, it deserves a bit of a tune-up. And so I ended up putting the leather that I just cut up to the axe, and I realised I gave myself nowhere near enough access around the sides. So I ended up rejigging the design, and this is what we have. It's okay to make mistakes, because you can't expect to be perfect at something right off the bat. You need practice. So what I'm doing now is I'm getting the leather wet, and this is to make it so that I can indent it easier for when I'm doing the carving and tooling. And so for Canada Day, we're going to be, the main design is going to be a maple leaf. So now I'm using a little scriber to trace the design I drew. And this is then going to transfer onto the leather. Just trying to be as careful as possible with this. Definitely like a 9 out of 10. Then add a little bit more water to it. And then we're going to now use the swivel knife, and we're going to carefully cut along the lines that have been made. And one of the many things that this does, is it makes it easier to then come back and bevel the tooler, and really adds depth to the design. So with this, what you're doing is you are applying pressure with the knuckle of your pointer finger, and then you're using your fingers and thumb to turn the knife, because it can rotate while still applying force, which allows you to make really tight, precise cuts. So I add a little bit more water, and then I put it onto my little, I call it a smash pad, but it's just it's a marble block. And then I start to bevel along the lines with my mallet and edger. So when you're doing this, it's important to try and keep the bevel, which is the thing that's denting the leather, to hold it straight up and down, unless you're trying to get into tight corners or ease pressure off. But it's a good rule of thumb to have. And if you've sufficiently wetted your leather and you hit it with the right pressure, it should create a patina, which is a darkening of the leather where it's been struck as the fibers compress. And this really adds a richness and depth to the design. Because you don't want the image to be flat, or to appear flat, I mean. Just going around the outline, trying to get the points sharp as possible of the leaf, and the little notches as crisp as possible. I would say carving is, and this design making is one of the things I'm more comfortable with. In leatherworking, I've only been doing it for on and off for like 2 years now, I suppose. But there are some things, such as like stitching, which I find quite hard to get, but that is what practice is for. So tap tap tap, tap tap, tap 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 tap, tap tap, tap tap tap, So now what I'm doing is I am punching holes for the stitching. And I guess these would be called pricking irons, but if anyone knows better, please let me know in the comments. So with the thickness of this leather, it does take quite a bit of walloping to get it to go in. Because it's 2 pieces, it's not just 6 ounces, it's doubled, so it's 12. And one of the tricks for this is if you're using, say like a 4 or 6 pricking iron, you can put maybe 2 of the spikes in holes that you've previously made, and that will help make sure that your line is straight. So I'm just seeing if everything's kind of fitting well, and I've wetted the areas where the joints are going to be, so I can start to wet mold it a little bit using these clamps. This is the one thing about having nicer quality leather, is you're able to do wet molding more easily as the skin is a little more give to it, it's a little more supple. Like a finer grain, I would say. So now that I've gotten the basic shape that I'm going to be wanting, I'm going to punch my holes on the other side. Since I didn't glue it, I'm using a 2-punch to keep it in place. Now, I'm going to start mixing the dye. I'm using a combination of red and brown, because I found that the red just on its own was a bit more like a stop sign red, and I wanted a deep maple red. So I'm just mixing, not a lot, but a few drops of the brown to the red, and then I'm using a dauber to mix it all up. And it's important to wear gloves when doing this because it really does stain. Just mixing it up. Now we're going to apply it. Just getting kind of a rough first coat all over. And then I'm going to go back over it several times to build up more of a consistency in the colour. I don't want it to be completely uniform, because I think a little bit would add a little bit of difference, would add some personality to it. Just getting both sides, the top of it, the edges, to make sure that there's no tan colour left. It's all the nice, rich red. I'm also getting the underside of the flap, because that will also be quite visible when using it, but I'm not going to bother to do the inside of it, where the axe head is actually going to sit. As I was going along, I found that using a circular motion actually helps create a much more uniform, less streaky application of the dye. So if you ever decide to do that, I would recommend using the circle technique. So let that dry for a bit. And then I'm going to apply, or add in rather, the button. So the snap consists of 4 parts, 2 and 2 becoming an upper and a lower. And I'm using my pointy spike to mark where the flap measures on the sheath when it's closed. And then use a hole punch to create holes so that I can put it through. And I'm going to use a white thread. So we have the red and white of like the Canadian flag. And to be honest, I don't have a stitching pony, which is something you can use to hold your work while you're stitching it. So I usually just hold it between my knees. And frankly, I didn't want to get that on camera because I look very, very, very silly. So what I'm applying now is a leather balm, which has a wax into it. This is to help condition the leather and adds a bit of a luster to it. So I apply it and then I let it dry. And then using a dry cloth, I buff it. And what this does is it really brings a sheen to it. I have other finishes like Rosaline and stuff, but I was really happy with this leather balm. Helps if you get it in the right way in Duck. Canada Day axe sheath. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe and leave a comment and let me know what you want to see next. Have a great day, and bye for now.